It's time for Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla. Stay tuned for insights, impact, and inspiration right here on Channel Africa. Available on the Channel Africa app. Tsepiso Makwetla winds it down on Africa World Hour, 9 to 10 p.m.
Talk about an absolutely spirited entry into the show. That was Chico Antonio with Tetego. What a beautiful song. A very good evening to you. A warm welcome. This is Africa World Hour on this Monday, the 23rd of February 2026. Thank you so much for joining us as we bring you 60 minutes of the very latest news and developments in and around your world, whether you're listening from the heart of Africa or from other corners of the globe. We welcome your perspective. This is the show that brings you the faces, the voices, and the perspectives that matter, and always yours does as well. So please do reach out to us. +27 63 406 9126. Share your thoughts on some of the stories that we're covering, or those that you think we ought to be covering and haven't done so yet. So we start off the show with our top stories this hour.
It's time for Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla. Stay tuned for insights, impact, and inspiration right here on Channel Africa. The Channel Africa app.
In our top stories this hour, South Africa's suspended Deputy National Police Commissioner General Shadrack Sibiya has denied receiving impala antelopes from attempted murder accused Vusi Muzi Kat Matlala. Evidence before the commission shows that Sibiya forwarded images of two impalas that were in distress to General Kosi Sitemula, who 2 days after the alleged delivery from Matlala. Despite this, Sibiya maintains that the delivery of the antelopes from Matlala did not happen.
Categorically deny that I acquired and received any impala from Matlala or from any other person for that matter. No animal was delivered to my plot pursuant to this discussion. In fact, the remaining blood stock on my property has already died. In any event, I'm no longer in a financial position to maintain any animals, let alone required livestock.
Staying in South Africa, a Johannesburg court postponed the case of the son of the late former Zimbabwean President Robert Mugabe and his co-accused Bellarmine Chatunga. Mugabe and his cousin Tobias Matoze appeared briefly before the Alexandra Magistrates Court today following their arrest on a charge of attempted murder. Their lawyer, Znetla Mkuni, confirmed that the duo will be facing additional charges.
Yeah, look, we can't speak too much on that at this stage. I mean, it's something that's only just been brought to our attention. We still need to take instructions from our client. As the prosecution stated, the investigations from the SAPS are still ongoing. So we're still waiting for those to be finalized so that we can then, of course, consult with our client, take instructions, and then take the necessary steps in order to deal with our client's matter.
Meetings Africa's Bond Day has seen a reflection of 20 years of showcasing Africa's strengths, unlocking opportunities, and advancing the continent's visibility on the global stage. The 2026 edition has been described as a landmark edition under the theme 20 years of connecting Africa to the world. Tourism South Africa's Corne Koch says the event sets a strategic tone for the main trade show, with dialogues centered around strengthening collective positioning in the face of the geopolitical shift.
It gives us that opportunity. It gives us an opportunity to meet each other, set new scenes, look at new economic opportunities, so that when we go into the exhibition space, we know what it is that we're looking for. We want to be able to connect with the continent, our fellow country members. We've got about 20 Africa countries that will be exhibiting at Meetings Africa, and that's a great legacy that this event has been given us, for the last 20 years.
Moving on to other news, Chad has closed its border with the Sudan until further notice. A government statement says the measure is needed to stop repeated incursions by Sudanese armed groups into Chadian territory. Sudan remains locked in an almost 3-year power struggle between the regular army and the RSF. As the BBC's Barbara Plett reports, both the RSF and the Sudanese armed forces have been accused of atrocities.
Chad is an important entry point for humanitarian workers and convoys heading to its war-ravaged neighbour. But it has also seen the fighting spill over its borders several times. In a statement, Chad's communications minister said he wanted to halt the risk of Sudan's conflict spreading, and that this measure was necessary to protect citizens and refugee populations.
Further afield, prosecutors of the International Criminal Court have begun presenting evidence against former Philippine President Rodrigo Duterte. The hearings will decide whether Duterte should have a full trial for alleged crimes against humanity. In his opening statement to the court, Deputy Chief Prosecutor Mame Mandiaye Nyang described widespread and systematic attacks on the civilian population.
In a 12 December 2016 speech, Mr. Duterte admitted that he used to ride around Davao on a motorcycle looking for trouble, so he could kill. And he said, and this again his own word I'm quoting here, in Davao, I used to do it personally, just to show the guy that if I can do it, why can't you?
And finally, the United Nations Human Rights Council has started its 61st regular session in Geneva with statements from the Palais des Nations in Geneva. More than 100 states are expected to address the council under the presidency of Ambassador Sudarto Reza Suryodipuro of Indonesia. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, highlighted the importance of the council.
Human rights are under a full-scale attack around the world. The rule of law is being outmuscled by the rule of force. And this assault is not coming from the shadows or by surprise. It is happening in plain sight and often led by those who hold the greatest power around the world.
At 6 minutes past 9, we'll take a look at some of the top stories in just a moment.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
Aid organizations in the Democratic Republic of Congo say more than 2,500 households have been left without shelter after two rivers burst their banks and flooded several villages in the country's central eastern region. Recent rains have continued to destroy much of the infrastructure in the Maniema province, leading to the overflow of the Congo and Ulundi rivers and the displacement of hundreds of residents in the villages of Kasera, Tubila and Ulindi. For more on this, we joined on the line by Channel Africa's correspondent in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Jimmy Shukrani, who speaks to us from Goma. Jimmy, a very good evening to you. So just two issues we want to address with you, but let's just first start with this humanitarian disaster that is unfolded. I believe it's already vulnerable states like that of South Kivu that have experienced the overflow of Lake Tanganyika and that they've impacted urban infrastructure in Uvira as well.
Thank you so much. This humanitarian situation is just a great problem, and when this happened, civil society confirmed this news, just confirming that there is a degradation of humanitarian because of this incident which happened. But the authorities in the Democratic Republic of Congo didn't give a point of views for what happened, and people are asking the government to resolve this such as a problem, because it became a recurrent problems to the population. Apart from Maniema is one of the areas which are in the eastern part of the Democratic Republic of Congo. And these areas have reported since the beginning of this year, have reports such as accident where many houses have been just made with this accident. So people are, for now, they are asking the government to put their strength in protecting civil in this such as problems, in order to struggle against maybe this cannot happen again, is the confirmation of the civil society and the local organization, which confirmed that apart from households, more than 2,500 households which have been deteriorated in this area, but there is also people who died, reason why local organizations are asking the intervention as well as in order to protecting other civilians' life, which can be touched in such as accident.
Jimmy, I mentioned the fact that this is areas where there's been massive displacement as a result of the ongoing conflict. So with the destruction of 229 health facilities, how does that bode for people who are now affected by this to survive?
For now, people are touched just on high because it happened when maybe they were not prepared. With an accident, they were not prepared about this accident. We cannot say there is a part of people who have been touched with this accident. No, are lost. Yes, today in the morning, I was online with a humanitarian who is working there. He told me that not just a little number, no, people have been touched on the high level. Maybe the local organization has just trying to give their intervention as they can, but they say it is not enough. It is not enough, and they are just crying to the others organization, which they can intervene on the great level to help them, because the local organization, they are for now they are not really convinced that they can solve such as problems, and they put at least the government, the Congolese government, which did not intervene. There is some parties which are in the insecurity, and to help people in such a situation, it requires also to be secured, to have a security, and they don't have a full security just to help those people. So reason why they are really seeing this is a great problem for them. They want other big organization, international organization, which are working in the Eastern DRC, just to do as well as and to help them to serve people in this area.
Right. So, Jimmy, all of this occurs amidst the reopening of the Kavimvira-Gatumba crossing, that is between the DRC and Burundi. How has this, or rather should I say, what does this mean by those who've been affected now, if at all? Because this is the first time in 2 months that the Gatumba crossing is now open. Are we seeing huge traffic levels as a result?
Yes, more than 2 months without activities at Kavimvira. It's the side of the DRC, and Gatumba, the side of Burundi. 2 months was a great research as economic, because people, this border is related to cities, the Uvira in the DRC and Bujumbura in Burundi. The economic situation have been in low, and this border have been one of the important which the Democratic Republic of Congo have. And remember that it has been closed since the M23 have taken over the city of Uvira. So it deteriorated the economic situation, because Burundian crossed the border to coming in Congo, and Congolese also crossed the border going in Burundi. It was a great economic ambience, even if there were some problems, some security problems due to active of militias which were operating on the side of the Democratic Republic of Congo. But since its reopening, it ensured that maybe the economic situation can be improved, because two governments have been at the same point of view to reopen this border. And most of Congolese have fled to Bujumbura just when the M23 have taken over this city. And now when the Congolese have begun to come back again in their country, that are saying the South Kivu, it's ensured that maybe the economic situation is going to be improved on two sides, the Congolese and the Burundian. You know that Uvira and Bujumbura are two cities which they have their own story to the economic, and some students, some people just leave Bujumbura and leave Uvira and come and go to study in Bujumbura. So they have the stories. 2 months without opening of this border, it was a great law of economic situation between two countries, especially two cities, Bujumbura and Uvira, on the side of the DRC.
Jimmy, thank you so much for that update. Much appreciated. Jimmy Shukrani is our correspondent out in the Democratic Republic of Congo, giving us the latest update on what is happening in the eastern parts of the DRC after 2 river banks burst, leaving hundreds of thousands of people displaced. And this, of course, destroying infrastructure. And he was also speaking to us about the reopening of a cross-border trade between Bujumbura and Uvira. This is after that crossing that was closed for 2 months reopened today. Brings the time to just about 17 minutes past 9.
Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the perspective. Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
The United Nations Human Rights Council has started its 61st regular session in Geneva with statements from the Palais des Nations in Geneva. More than 100 states are expected to address the council under the presidency of Ambassador Sidarto Reza Suryo Dipuro of Indonesia. The Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, was amongst the first. He highlighted the importance of the council.
Human rights are under a full-scale attack around the world. The rule of law is being outmuscled by the rule of force. And this assault is not coming from the shadows or by surprise. It is happening in plain sight and often led by those who hold the greatest power. Around the world, human rights are being pushed back deliberately, strategically, and sometimes proudly. The consequences are devastating, as witnessed in the Council, and as written in the lives of people who suffer twice, first from violence, oppression or exclusion, and then again from the world's indifference. When human rights fall, everything else trembles. Peace, development, social cohesion, trust, solidarity. This is precisely why the tools of the Human Rights Council, such as the special rapporteurs, special procedures, investigative mechanisms, and universal periodic review are essential. And it is precisely why, as we mark the Council's 20th anniversary, we also recognize it's more important than ever to translate geopolitical engagement into a path towards strengthening human rights everywhere.
And that is the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres speaking at the UN Council for Human Rights in Geneva. Moving on now to Zambia, where the country has announced the detection of polio virus in the capital of Lusaka. The last case of polio in Zambia was in 1995, but this record is now at stake after the detection of that polio virus. Our correspondent in Zambia, Arthur Davis Kopo, reports that the detection of polio is now adding to the already existing threats in the region following detection of similar types in Malawi, Zimbabwe, Angola and Namibia.
The detection of poliovirus in the environment by local and international health surveillance teams is now being considered as a public health threat, especially that the highly infectious disease that would mainly attack children may cause permanent disability or death. Resident Doctors Association of Zambia President Paul Chiwe speaks to the polio type 2 and some of the effects on humans.
This is the vaccine-derived polio type 2. I think this one, we haven't recorded paralysis yet. I think more the symptoms, range from just, fatigue, you have fevers, with neck stiffness, pain, and these resolve within a period of 2 to 10 days. The impact, on a larger scale, the one that is alarming, if we talk of polio, is also leading to disability. Yes, and death, of course, because we have paralysis of the muscles that help us breathe, and obviously it leads to mortality.
The Zambian government says the poliovirus found in the environment in Lusaka is similar to the polio type 2 found in Namibia, and are all believed to have links to the poliovirus found in Angola. Malawi in 2026 this year recorded 2 isolation cases of polioviruses linked to previous transmission in Zimbabwe, meaning the entire Southern Africa sub-region is at high risk of the disease. Acting Minister of Health in Zambia, who is substantively Information Minister, Cornelius Mwetwa, reveals at a media briefing.
The situation constitutes a public health emergency of international concern and carries a high potential risk of spread, jeopardizing the health of many children and reversing the gains that the country and Africa as a continent as a whole has been making in eliminating polio.
The Zambian government adds that despite the detection, there is no confirmed case in humans so far, but cautioning citizens to practice high standards of hygiene so as to avoid creating polio statistics. The World Health Organization (WHO) is concerned with the latest developments in Zambia, and country representative Dr. Clement Lasuba says working together with the Zambian government, this threat can be contained through immunization and maintaining clean environments.
We clearly see the linkage between the response to immunization and water and sanitation, which are critical on the messages that have been conveyed.
In response to the threat, the Zambian government, through Health Permanent Secretary Kennedy Shimpi, reviews plans to conduct mass immunization of children to protect them.
So it means those provinces that are neighboring those countries, if they will have to have a vaccine program.
Medical experts, through Dr. Pochiwe, assure citizens that vaccines work and advises against myths and propaganda around the life-saving commodity.
Just remove the myths that come with vaccines, because a certain population think vaccines are witchcraft, or they want to eliminate people from Africa.
Reporting for Channel Africa in Lusaka, Zambia, I'm Arthur Davis, Scopo.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
Feeding schemes and soup kitchens continue to have a meaningful impact on many communities in South Africa. Across the country, many families face a daily reality of stretched meals, reduced food portions or limited food, amongst others. While food relief remains vital, soup kitchens and feeding schemes are making a huge impact on addressing hunger and poverty, as Nhlanhla Mahlangu tells us.
Soup kitchens and feeding schemes in South Africa are currently facing high demand due to rising food insecurity. However, their impact extends far beyond the meals served. It's a testament to the power of community and compassion. It is everyday community heroes who are quietly feeding, organizing, and protecting vulnerable families across South Africa. One example of this impact can be seen through community leaders like Mama Cindy Kunene from KwaDukuza in Stenga in KwaZulu-Natal. For years, she has run a community kitchen that feeds families facing food food insecurity, often working with limited resources. She says her work is driven by her daily commitment to cook, organize, and nourish her community in circumstances where food access is never guaranteed.
The thing that motivated me, it was during the COVID-19 2020, where I also stopped working because I was myself sick. But in that period, I thought to myself, I can't just sit and just wait to die. I look at the community and I saw people that were in need. Some of them, they've lost their loved ones because of COVID-19. So then, because where I grew up, my mother was always telling, if you see somebody is in need, you share something. So that passion and that teaching from my home, when the COVID-19 kicked in, that's where that passion also popped up. So then I decided to start the soup kitchen.
While hunger is often measured by food shortages, the deeper crisis lies in the quality, consistency, and dignity of meals that families can access. Fezeka Tsotso from Good Samaritan Soup Kitchen in Motherwell in Port Elizabeth says the challenges faced by many communities inspired the opening of the soup kitchen.
Our community unemployment rate is very high. People are not working, the kids are out, they just drop out from school because they feel that there's no food when I come back from school I'm gonna get. We started with 50 people, but up to now it's more than. We cannot handle even them because when we started we were 50 and there were 80 elderly. Now there are 80 elderly and 40 kids and the homeless one are 30 because we keep their records. But the numbers are growing every day. We've got a problem now of getting big numbers every day.
Slindile Mbele, a dietitian from Unilever, says serving a balanced, nutritious meal is important.
Having a healthy, nutritious meal is so beneficial because our bodies need nutrients to run efficiently. So when you have a balanced meal, you have a mixture of all the fuel that your body needs to work or perform at its best. Your brain, your heart, your organs, your blood system, everything works optimally when you have a balanced diet.
Every week, the soup kitchen and feeding schemes come alive with the spirit of giving and caring, providing more than just sustenance. It offers dignity, hope, and a sense of belonging. They've become a sanctuary for the underprivileged, the elderly, the unemployed, and anyone in need. Reporting for Channel Africa, I am Nhlanhla Mahlangu in Johannesburg.
Este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África, com Remo Samo e João Yabalá.
A situação do ativista angolano Serrote José de Oliveira, preso desde julho, tem gerado grande preocupação internacional. Conhecido como General Nila e presidente do movimento União Nacional para a Total Revolução de Angola, Serrote iniciou uma greve de fome em protesto contra a sua prisão, que considera arbitrária. De acordo com a Amnistia Internacional, o estado de saúde do ativista está a deteriorar-se rapidamente devido à falta de acesso a cuidados médicos adequados. Para discutir o impacto deste caso e o estado da liberdade política em Angola, vamos conversar com Dito Dale, ativista e defensor dos direitos humanos.
Nós estamos diante de uma clara estratégia de aniquilar o jovem, porque quando uma pessoa está doente, deve ser assistida. Ao não proporcionar esses cuidados médicos, o que é que o regime quer? Não quer que esse jovem saia livre e com vida da prisão, quer matá-lo.
De segunda a sexta-feira, das 20 às 21 horas locais, este é o Caleidoscópio de Canal África.
1 hour, one continent, one voice. Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla on Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum has praised the armed forces for the operation that killed one of the country's top drug lord known as El Mencho. Cartel members unleashed a wave of violence following El Mencho's death. Sheinbaum says the group that has been involved in the torching business and erecting burning blockades in retaliation to the killing of their leader needs to be lambasted.
Right now, the most important thing is to guarantee peace and security for everyone in Mexico. That's precisely what's being done. Today, there is more tranquility, there are armed forces, there's a security cabinet, and there is a lot of coordination. So you can rest assured that peace, security, and normalcy are being safeguarded.
And that's the voice of Mexico's President Claudia Sheinbaum through a report for a look at the rise in criminal cartels taking over entire police structures in countries such as Mexico, Haiti, and most recently we've seen reports of this occurring in South Africa. Let's speak now to anti-terrorism specialist and global security analyst Dr. Dixon Osaije. A very good evening to you. You join us from Nigeria, I believe. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Let's just first start with the situation in Mexico. Mexico, notorious really for drug cartels and the dynastic occurrence of such. I want to look at the killing of El Mencho. First of all, who he was and why he was a terror to be reckoned with.
Thank you very much. El Mencho is one of the most dangerous cartels leader in the world, and he has been declared wanted by the Mexican authority a while ago, and also the United States government has declared him wanted with a bounty on his head. He was a former police officer who uses his privilege to institutionalize criminal gangs and also ensure that he put the state in a state of mess. So for me, I think El Mencho has really caused a lot of havoc globally with his criminal gangs and his criminal networks, and the definition of El Mencho, I think, will perhaps mitigate the flow of methamphetamine production and also global distribution routes, which he and his gangs have been able to commercialize over the years using their network as one of the most powerful cartels in the world.
And I want to look at those networks, how they build, how they manage to survive, and why it is that they seem to be thriving.
Well, for me, why they survive is that truly criminal cartels do not defeat state governments or the state through firepower. They win when institutions decay internally, and that is why, as a country, your institution must be, solid and also must be solidified, and as well, have your officers remain well trained to ensure that there is no internal threat. So one of the major tactics El Mencho and his CJNG cartel gangs do adopt is, penetrating the state institution through internal threat and also ensuring that the corrupt officials. Then from there they penetrate the state government and also the states through their high-powered financial engagement and also their high-powered gangster groups across the states. So for me, in terms of firepower, El Mencho and his gangs, I don't think they are more powerful than the state, but for me, I think they use institutional decay to penetrate, and that's why each country that is being corrupted, each country that has its officials in the corrupt list, prone to El Mencho penetration, and that is how he has been succeeding his criminal enterprise for a very long time without being captured alive or decimated.
I mean, we've seen many presidential candidates, not only in Mexico but in Haiti as well, who come on the ticket of dealing with this criminal infrastructure and how to break the back of it. But it seems that there are more and more sophisticated ways of these gangs, these criminal networks, of not only surpassing the existing, state law enforcement infrastructure, but just also, as you say, they are insidious in community power structures at state level. How are they able to survive even with greater concentration on how they operate. There's obviously a greater spotlight on these operations.
Well, they built a very powerful paramilitary-style criminal structure. When you have a paramilitary-style criminal structure, you'll be able to penetrate the state from different fronts, and that's how these gangs have operated in Mexico and around the world. They are known for state strategic territorial control and also intimidation. One of their driving factors is intimidation, suppress and control. When you suppress one or two state officials, what happens there is that they tend to succumb. If they don't succumb, then they adopt what we call a kidnap methodology. And once they have your loved ones in their custody, you tend to succumb without the consent or without the knowledge of the state government. So these guys are very formidable and do not defeat states through firepower. They are very excellent in their operation and well organized. And that is one of the major reasons why most of the presidential aspirants and other state government officials are unable to go in and fetch him hands-on, because some of them fear for the intimidation of their family and also insider compromise that has also eaten so deep within the institution of the Mexican institution. So for me, I think it was a strategic move from the criminal point of view, using the CJNG cartel network and getting down the Mexican government to oblige to their own control methodology.
We've seen that the financial infrastructure is seamlessly transatlantic as well, where we've heard reports of Mexican cartels reportedly setting up shop in South Africa. What is the role of international crime-fighting agencies like Interpol or the bilateral relations between countries in terms of fighting, these criminal networks? Are they having any success?
Well, they're having some success. For example, United Nations, introduced suppression methodology to ensure that they suppress the criminal gangs operating in Haiti. Haiti is one of the first black nations in the world that gained independence in 1804, over 20 years old state, and so far they are still experiencing this gangster rulership within their zone. And I think that has to do with institutional capability and capacity. For me, South Africa is a great country, well-respected country in the world, and we could see the migration of methamphetamine through some illegal routes and also getting into some agency production and supply, taking place in one or two parts of the state. So, for me, if we want to get it right, and if the world wants to support this fight against drug abuse and drug transportation, I think the United Nations needs to also come on board and make crime and punishment very effective. What has gone wrong over the time is that there's no effective punishment for drug lords and drug pushers. They just have their way for a very long time. If you want to curtail with crime and punishment, you need to ensure you apply speed and momentum. So I will advise the United Nations to apply speed and momentum to ensure that they bring down these global gangsters, to ensure that they do not infiltrate most of these African countries as well. So South Africa as a point of study, and also Haiti as a point of study. So for me, I will advise the adopt an effective crime and punishment methodology, and also have an effective synergy within the states to the borderline and also to the transportation network to ensure that they have effective equipment that they can use to identify products like methamphetamine coming into South Africa and also other parts of African countries, so that our youth and our people will not be addicted to drug abuse and as well cut their life short during addiction.
So let's just look at community and specific group risks, because I'm wondering, at what point does a country concede defeat to a point where they know that the retaliation is such that communities can't defend themselves, the state doesn't have much control over the protection of communities. When does a state concede that it's captured and has become a narco state? I'm sorry. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm saying, what is the litmus test for a state to concede that they are captured and they've become a narco state?
Well, for me, there are various methodologies that states can apply, you understand, because for me, I think, for example, South Africa treats financial warfare, very seriously, and what we should look at is priority actions. Sometimes if you want to continue with these guys, you need to follow the money process, aggressive asset tracing. Most times, a lot of people are not, accountable to government. That's why aggressive asset tracing, restraint orders for features and lifestyle audits where risk indicators exist is very important, so that people who think they can get rich quick through the sales of drugs, we see it as a wasted effort. The whole essence of crime prevention is to allow the criminals to labor in vain. And when you allow them labor in vain, it's going to be a form of specific deterrence and general deterrence, and as well as psychological deterrence. So states should start looking at targeting facilitators, and as well look at state-based money laundering focus. Because most times money laundering is, being orchestrated through this, drug formations. So for me, I think it's a holistic process. What our advice is that countries should start looking at reviewing, having a holistic review of its, apprehension methodology as well. Because if you don't apprehend most of these criminals, crime keeps on flourishing. So that's why when people are punished for crime, they commit, crime mitigates. If you don't punish them, or if you don't get hold of them quickly, crime keeps flourishing. And that is what has led to the emergence and the long time, business, drug business, movement between Macho and his DJ NG criminal groups.
And just finally, how do the industrialized kidnapping models that we're seeing by Haitian gangs compared to the emerging kidnapping trends that we're seeing in South Africa, and one that has certainly become even more established is the ones that we're seeing in Nigeria as well?
A fantastic question. We have various forms of kidnapping. What these criminal gangs do compared to that of Nigeria is that they carry out what we classify as express kidnapping. When they carry out this express kidnapping, is to take hold of someone, for an immediate resolution or immediate swapping to ensure they gain what they want to have. For example, if someone accosts a citizen on the road, take him to the ATM machine at one point and force him to withdraw his money, so we classify as express kidnapping. So for me, express kidnapping and organized ransom for kidnapping is one of the most dangerous operational methodology of these criminals. Like in Nigeria, what we're experiencing in Nigeria presently is high network kidnapping and also mass abduction. And this revenue process in which most of these guys generate revenue. Kidnapping is becoming a commercialized business within the African region, and it's really, really detrimental to the survival of the African state. So if we want to get it right, Nigerian kidnapping methodology system is really disturbing. The state government is trying their best to ensure they mitigate it, but crime is still flourishing. What I also have advised the government all time long is that they need to have an holistic technological approach. For us to succeed against these gangsters, we need to have an effective technological approach to support the critical security measures and the policing system to ensure they bring most of these criminal gangsters to book and allow African countries to breach again.
Dr. Dixon Osagie, thank you so much for speaking to us. He's an anti-terrorism specialist and global security analyst.
Africa World Hour, unpacking global headlines from an African perspective. At the forefront, the most pressing issues on Africa World Hour with Tsepiso Makwetla.
Channel Africa.
And it is now 16 minutes to 10. Day one of Meetings Africa has wrapped up in the Johannesburg city, South Africa, with industry leaders gathering for the Business Opportunity Networking Day at the Sandton Convention Centre. Discussions focused on the global business events landscape and how meetings and conferences can connect Africa to the world while driving investment and development. We'll get back to that story in just a moment. So moving on now to this story. It's a story that we've been chasing for a while now. We're talking about a new game that has come to the fore. It was quite interesting. The way, firstly, I saw it was on the BBC, is how it was framed, that it was about Africans fantasizing. But is it really so? Is it just reality? Because for more than a century, African artifacts looted during colonial conquest, from palaces of Benin to the courts of Ashanti, have been displayed in Western museums under the language of universal heritage. Yet many of these objects were taken in acts of outright violence, including the 1897 British assault of the Kingdom of Benin, when thousands of Benin bronzes were seized and scattered across Europe. Now, a new video game, Relooted, reimagines that history. Europe Now, a new video game, Relooted, reimagines that history through, instead of waiting for diplomatic negotiations, players assume the role of Africans reclaiming stolen treasures from Western institutions. It is fiction, but it steps squarely into a very real debate about restitution, reparations, and narrative power. We're joined now by the game's narrative director, Mohale Mashego. Mohale, very good evening to you. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us.
Hi, Tsepiso. Thanks for having me.
Now, your game turns the restitution debate into interactive storytelling. What brought it about? And you know, just looking at the new rules of the Transatlantic Treaty, I'm sure it's more urgent now than ever.
Yeah, so in 2018, our creative director was in London with his parents, and his mom saw the Mirad monument, and she sort of said, "Oh, you know, I'm so upset about this monument being moved from one place in the world to, you know, a museum." And she sort of joked that he should make a game about it. And a few years later, he contacted me and said, would you like to write for this game? And so we sort of imagined what it would be like if 100 years from now things were still taking this long for African artifacts to be brought back home. So we made up this treaty, the Transatlantic Returns Treaty, basically saying it doesn't matter how long people have been working on it. And so one of the characters in the game, Prof. Grace, who is voiced by Mam Abigail Kubeka, you know, she's coming to the end of her life, and she just thinks, oh gosh, even when I tried to do it the right way with the Transatlantic Returns Treaty, I didn't do it properly. So she gets her granddaughter and grandson involved in taking back these artifacts using different means.
So let's talk about that, the demands of a compelling gameplay alongside the gravity of colonial violence, including getting that narrative right.
Yeah, so, you know, one of the first things was obviously we're making games, so it's got to be a fun game, right? And we worked a long time to get this gameplay loop correct, because the thing about watching heist films is it's very exciting when you're able to sort of be, you know, when you're able to be surprised in the end of how they pulled it off. But in games, it's very different because you're basically controlling the character. And so we needed to work out how we could still have that same feeling of excitement, even though the player was putting the plans through together. And in terms of narrative, we use real artifacts in the game to sort of, you know, let people know that these are real things, and we have a lot of history on the artifacts as well. So you can have fun, but you can also be, you know, educated. When did we stop learning from things that we engage with?
Educated, and also, you know, giving back people their dignity through the reclaiming of that narrative power. But I'm curious, you know, the way the BBC, where I saw the report, you know, framed it was that it's a fantasy, but it is a reality. The looting of the Benin statues in 1897 was through a brutal military campaign, and we know a lot of games have a lot of violence, but it's not about reenacting that violence. It's about something more spiritual and greater than that. So I want to see, how does it allow the player to express their anger, but at the same time build something beautiful out of it, so to speak?
Well, I guess, with any heist genre, right, first you find out about the thing you're taking, and this is an opportunity where the team gets together and they get to learn about this artifact, and then they have to put a plan in place. So, our creative director said it beautifully. He said, restitution is long and it's complicated and it's taking forever, but this game kind of gives you that feeling of what it'll feel like when the artifacts are back where they belong. So, you plan, you find out about the artifact, you plan and you prepare, and then you take the artifacts, and it's this feeling of like running out of a building with important artifacts, this feeling of like liberation and reclaiming something and returning it back home.
And so you're staging heists to recover artifacts. You offering catharsis of some sorts, I can imagine. But are you also challenging audiences to confront the moral contradictions at the heart of museum culture, which especially those Western museums who are experiencing some sort of amnesia, who somehow are claiming it as part of their own cultural heritage?
Well, it's an interesting question, and I think what we do is we give the facts of how these things were removed, right, from where they are. And once you've pulled off the heist, you can also go into a codex in the game and have a look at the significance of these artifacts. So for us, we're putting the facts forward and saying, this is how it was taken. How could you possibly think that it belongs in a museum? And I think it's one small narrative in the conversation around museums of the future. What do museums look like? Where do things belong? And who has the right to look after or be, for who has the right to be in control of someone's history? Who has the right to be a custodian of someone's history? So it definitely starts the conversation. And the game is definitely an invitation to start thinking about those things for people who have never, or people who have, and, want to continue to learn about these artifacts.
And let's talk about learning even further, because from somebody who is Pan-African, they would all rally around it as a unifying, project, dispossession and solidarity all in one. But it also tells the story, I'd imagine, from every single artifact, a single national history. So how do you bring them together, yet creating unity, but also allowing people to claim their uniqueness, their individuality?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And I think for the team as well, this was all learning because we had two researchers who actually had to help find these artifacts, and we then had them, created 3D models of them in the game. So I think for me also, it was a lot of learning. And I don't believe that we teach enough African history in Africa itself. So this is definitely a great learning tool if people are interested. But also if people just want to, speed run through the game, they're allowed to do that as well. But we went through a lot of trouble to research these artifacts and make sure they had compelling stories, and we even went as far as finding a pronunciation guide, so that when our voice actors were, who are in the game, were pronouncing these words, they would give it the dignity that it deserves, So it's this kind of education tool of different ethnic groups in different, African countries.
Well, it's a fascinating subject, and we're really grateful that we're able to speak to you about it. And I hope sometime we're able to talk about whether the game does go towards the wider reparations debate beyond the walls of the museums, to look at labor, land, wealth, etc. But thank you so much for speaking to us. That is Relooted, the game's narrative director, Mohale Mashego.
Across Africa, communities rise with the promise of clean water and clean sanitation. The African Union's 2026 theme calls us to action.
It's about mobilizing real commitments, securing climate-resilient water and sanitation projects, and ensuring that water becomes a driver of sustainable development and prosperity across the continent.
A landmark moment, not only for Africa, but for the global movement for access to safe water for all.
Assuring sustainable water availability for every home, every village, every nation. This is the Africa we want.
Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Africa World Hour. Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective. Conversations are happening, and Channel Africa is at the heart of them. We tell the African story with clarity, pride, and purpose, reaching audiences that matter to your brand. Partner with us and connect your business with listeners across borders in multiple languages and markets. For partnership opportunities, sponsorship, or sales, email us at partnership@channelafrica.co.za. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
África. Conhece o Ntivani?
Claro que sou eu.
Ntivani é o amante da música de corpo e alma.
Eu amo música africana.
Ele aprecia todos os tipos de melodias e passa os seus dias a ouvir a Channel Africa. Adivinha só, a Channel Africa quer ajudar o Ntivani e os amantes da música em todo o lado a descobrir ainda mais música incrível. Por isso, a Channel Africa está a convocar artistas africanos a submeterem as suas músicas. Músicos, lembrem-se de nos dar todas as informações relevantes no music@channelafrica.co.za. As submissões são a vossa oportunidade de ser ouvidos, mas não garantem inclusão na lista. Todas as submissões serão cuidadosamente analisadas para verificar se cumprem os requisitos da nossa estação. Canal África, a perspectiva africana.
Africa World Hour. Unpacking global headlines from an African perspective.
At 4 minutes to 10 as we wrap up the show, day one of the meetings, Africa, as we mentioned, has wrapped up in Johannesburg, South Africa, with industry leaders gathering for the Business Opportunity Networking Day. That is Bonde at the Santa Convention Centre. Discussions focused on the global business events landscape and how meetings and conferences can connect Africa to the world while driving investment and development. Channel Africa's Lebogang Mabange was in attendance for this report.
The Business Opportunity Networking Day, Bond Day, set the tone for this year's Meetings Africa, an annual premier business events trade show bringing together global industry leaders to unpack the role of business events in shaping economies and societies. Delivering the keynote address, Nozipho Chabalala, Chief Executive Officer of the Conversation Strategists, reflecting on how dialogue at global gatherings can lead to real change.
Some of these conversational spaces have indeed had measurable outcomes. I've seen large-scale investments go into the education sector, where countries have actively built more schools, enrolled more children, and realized a higher quality output in their educational outcomes. I've seen investments in healthcare that have gone beyond just the building of hospitals, but saving lives, women and children, and lifting entire communities out of disease.
However, she cautioned that not every conversation leads to meaningful results.
But I want to be honest, not all of our conversations have led to these amazing outcomes. I've also watched historic opportunities stall. I've seen tough conversations slowly slide down the agenda as they are replaced with more sexier topics that fit the narrative of the day. I've seen entire groups being marginalized and completely forgotten because they don't represent the excitement of the time and the kind of voices that have influence in that moment.
Meanwhile, global industry data shows the meeting sector continues to evolve with emerging topics shaping conversations. Dr. Senthil Gopinath, CEO of the International Congress and Conversion Society, ICA, highlighted the rapid growth of discussions around artificial intelligence.
And that there is Lebogang Mabange reporting on that Meetings Africa event taking place in Sandton, Johannesburg. What's happening this evening, African Diaries?
So today is a Monday, so we're
Tell
focusing
me
on
about it.
Did you feel it? The Monday. Okay, so we're going to help you center yourself, right? In the first hour, we were looking at breath work and how to utilize this in sticky situations, in situations where you don't want to lose your cool, but also just being able to bring yourself to center, I think, is the most focal thing. We're going to be talking to Heather Kershaw. And then in the second hour of the show, we speak to Matapelo Mabaso, and we're going to be talking about just being mindful of your body, of your mental state, of your body, and how all of these come together as one.
So imagine in the middle of a tricky situation, you're just going...
Yeah, absolutely. 4 counts in. 1, 2, 3, 4 counts. It works.
Try not to do that in downtown Johannesburg, Conwerti, taxi rank, something like that.
You need the rough. You think about it like this: muddy water. If you shake it, it becomes all brown, right? But when you let it settle, you notice that you have clear water at the end after some time. So you need that clarity of thought. Yeah, but you can walk and be clear is the point.
I think that's the trick, though. That's Shayla Jikumara coming up next with African Diaries. From us, it's good night for now.
Conversations that touch the heart and inspire change. Here on African Diaries, only on Channel Africa. Join us on